Hi and welcome to our new series, How I Settled in West Sweden. In this series you will hear the real stories of people who have embraced living in a new country and have settled in West Sweden. Today we hear the story of Chris O'Reilly, originally from Ireland but who moved to Gothenburg from Vienna for a new chapter in his life.
You can't just expect to settle in without giving something. You really have to be willing to put in the effort. But if you do put in that effort, I think you're richly rewarded when it comes to the society and the people you'll get to meet and be friends with. Sport in that sense I think is really good for helping you to settle in and meet people who have a common passion. The people and the culture here are, when it comes to a Scandinavian context, very, very social, which is great. My name is Chris O'Reilly. I'm from Ireland originally, but have been living in Sweden and Gothenburg specifically for almost 7 years now. I moved here in the autumn of 2017 and it's dragged me in deeper and deeper ever since. I work as a freelancer in sports journalism at a European and world level, so the Champions League or European or World Championships, and as a producer in the arts world, in the performance arts world. I chose Gothenburg originally just as a place to try. I was living in Vienna previously for 5 years, working full-time for the European Handball Federation, and decided at some point that I wanted to go freelance to expand my working life. I figured I wanted to try a new place as well, a brand new start. I'd considered a few different places and Gothenburg was one of them. I originally was here in 2016 for the Women's European Handball Championship, working in Gothenburg the entire time. Really liked the city, even in the depths of winter. I thought it was really nice and had a good atmosphere about it. And I figured I wanted to try somewhere in Scandinavia in particular and try that way of living. Yeah, there were multiple factors for why Gothenburg was the final choice. I figured after being in a capital city that I'd try a second city, somewhere that is still big enough but also close to the sea. It felt very central in Scandinavia as well, with all three capital cities being equidistant from Gothenburg. A lot of Scandinavian people said that it was the city that would suit me most because it is, in other people's eyes, I agree at this point, the most social of the major Scandinavian cities. So the easiest one to meet people and make an impact. So with all those things combined, I said, okay, I will try it out. And yeah, didn't expect that 7 years later almost that I'd still be here. I knew when I wanted to move here that first of all, finding an apartment would be quite tricky. So before I moved here, I came for a week just to hunt for apartments and get a feel for what it was like. Funnily enough, on my first evening in Gothenburg, I was just looking at the Gothenburg Irish Facebook group, and somebody had mentioned that there was a performance from an Irish artist at the Gothenburg Fringe Festival, which was only in its second year. I was a big Fringe Festival fan, had been to Edinburgh multiple times, which is the home of the largest arts festival in the world, which is a Fringe Festival. So I went to that show and went to a couple more and thought, okay, when I settle down here, I will get in touch with them and see if they need some help. So that was kind of the first connection to the city for me. Then in October 2017, once I had fixed the apartment, I came over and settling in that regard was fairly straightforward. I had, I think, the benefit of handball, which was already something as a freelancer I had fixed, so I knew I'd be working with that, and joined a club here in Gothenburg. Some people already reached out to me asking if I was interested in joining a kind of a fun amateur team, and that was fantastic because it was full of Swedish people, and sport in that sense I think is really good for helping you to settle in and meet people who have a common passion. And following that then it was through the arts, through Fringe. I think it was in January the following year. So after a couple of months here that I met the people running the festival and started getting involved with them. So already after a few months there were maybe these two separate social circles that I got involved with, and that really helped. In terms of settling in, finding people, finding community is massive. I know a lot of people tend to complain about not finding people. I think it's not something that is unique to Gothenburg. I see it everywhere. but an opinion that I think is very true and something I hold is that you need to put in something before you get out of it. You can't just expect to show up somewhere and be fully embraced. You need to start offering something. You need to put in what you get out, and in that sense, I think finding people, finding communities like that are really beneficial for that, because it helps you to find some common purpose and meet people in that way. So I think that really helped. I had previously lived in Vienna, and when I lived for 1 year in Germany, I was basically in the middle of nowhere, playing for a handball club there. And that was great for learning the language, because everyone over the age of, 40 or 50 at the time had no exposure to English, as it was on the old East Germany. So that was fantastic for having to learn the language and dive in really deep straight away. And in Sweden, in Gothenburg in particular, that's not the case, because it's such a multicultural city. English is very fluently spoken by everyone, which means that although you can attend courses, which I did, and I kind of leaned on the knowledge of German and English in terms of understanding people, because they're all Germanic languages. So reading and understanding was good at the start, but that probably made me a little bit complacent. It really depends on your output or your outlook in whether you want to. But I think it's important when moving anywhere to be able to, at least on a daily basis, communicate with people. What I really liked about living in this part of the country is the fact that it's not too massive, but it's also not small. Gothenburg as a city is rapidly growing, I think, as we know, has everything you need and is equidistant to all of the other major cities in Scandinavia. But it doesn't feel overwhelming in that regard. It can still feel like a village at times. You can be out having dinner or a drink with a friend, and then you meet 3 other people or 4 other people who you know in a matter of minutes. So I really like that. I think the scenery, the setting around Gothenburg is lovely, being at the coast. I live on Hisingen and have a massive park right beside me, which I think is very underestimated, the natural beauty. And the people and the culture here are, when it comes to a Scandinavian context, very, very social, which is great. You can meet people at a bar or at a cultural event, feel like you're allowed to talk to them, which is not always the case, I hear, from people in other parts of Scandinavia and particularly Sweden. So I think it's a very social part of the country. That is a major benefit, I think. To people thinking of moving here, I would say it's just worth a try. I originally came here thinking about doing it for, an undefined amount of time, a year or 2, not knowing where my professional life would take me necessarily, or personal life. And while I said 5 years in Vienna felt like it was enough, at the end of it, it's almost 7 years here in Gothenburg, and it has flown by. So for people thinking about moving here, I think it's just worth a try. You can't lose in that regard. Everything is worth trying. But I think there's a lot of opportunities here professionally. I think we see that in the type of people that live in the city and where they're coming from. And that you can't just expect to settle in without giving something. You really have to be willing to put in the effort. But if you do put in that effort, I think you're richly rewarded when it comes to the society and the people you'll get to meet and be friends with. I think Sweden is great in terms of recreational sport. There's a lot of options. I mean, in handball, for example, I think there are 8 different levels you can play competitively in, from like the top professional down to the older guys and girls who just want to show up once a week and throw a ball around. So I think that is a fantastic thing about Sweden in particular, that the recreational sport is so strong. Joining a club, I say club like a sports club, is fantastic for meeting people, because you are generally meeting people your own age, whether it's a handball club or people who play paddle or tennis. You will find people who then you have something in common with straight away, and that is, you're not necessarily going to talk about that thing all the time, but it's always a nice starting point. And I think it's the same both in sport and culture. I have in the last year and a half been taking acting classes at the Gothenburg English Studio Theatre at Chapmanstorp Guest, and that's also one of the venues for the Fringe festival. And there, again, you're meeting people with a similar interest, and also a variety of countries and ages as well. I remember the first course I did with them a year and a half ago. It was, I think, 18 people in the group, And it was all, beginners, and I think they came from maybe 12 different countries. People aging, like the age range from 20 to 65, but all kind of held together by this interest in just delving into theatre a little bit together. And so I think, joining these clubs, joining these courses is a great way to make lasting friendships, because unlike just meeting someone who you might meet and then who knows if you're going to become friends with, if you have these consistent meeting times throughout a whatever month period or year, then you also you're meeting people who are open to spending time doing these things as well. I think that's a strong bond to start with. A friend of mine and a colleague in the Fringe Festival, Sid Ray, who is from India and moved originally to study in Chalmers and has stayed ever since. He has been playing for the Gothenburg Dodgeball Club for a number of years and kept saying over and over again that I should try it out because, there's a lot of similarities to handball and it's a very social group. And separately, then in January, I was asked if I would come and commentate a tournament of dodgeball in Norway, because there was somebody who I was working with on the European handball scene who was involved in dodgeball and wanted to bring me in as a commentator because he liked what I was doing. And so I said, okay, I can give it a go, but I should probably learn how the sport works first. And so then, in order to learn it, I went over to the dodgeball club to see if I could train with them a little bit and get a feel for how it is. And they've been very welcoming as well. And the community they have reminds me a lot of what I've been saying about handball and the Fringe world, because it's quite international, the group, and let's say it's very community and social based. There are people who play it at a very serious level, who play for Sweden and play internationally, but they're playing alongside people who, like myself, had just been playing a few times, and people who want to try it out. So they're a very welcoming group as well. And for people who are maybe don't have any formal background in the sport or don't want to commit to playing something they've already done, I can recommend Dodgeball as well, because they're very good at helping people find a way into the sport and teaching them and introducing them. So if you have any hand-eye coordination, they'll find a way for you to get involved. And so, they've been brilliant. So Gothenburg during Fringe, doesn't quite take over the city in the way that Edinburgh Fringe does. If anyone has ever been to Edinburgh in August, they know that the Fringe is there and smacks them in the face because there's 3,500 shows every day. We're not quite as big. We also don't want to be that big at this stage. We're quite happy to create a nice, sustainable festival. But the atmosphere at the venues is very nice. I think the main feedback we get from artists, from volunteers, we have a very strong volunteer community, and from the audience is that the social aspect of the Fringe is very positive. People are amazed that they get to see these amazing artists from around the world. I think this year at the festival we have artists from 25 different countries participating. They get to see them on stage, and I think we all know when we go to the theatre or at a concert, we put artists on a pedestal. We see them as like, wow, these amazing, talented people. And then 2 hours later, they might be sharing a coffee or a beer with them at the venue bar or at a social gathering at the end of the night. So people really appreciate the fact that they are real people, the artists as well, and that they don't just disappear backstage and then go into their trailer and drive to the next city. They stay for a number of days, they perform a couple of times, and we really make it important for the artists to get involved in the social side. And so that's what you can expect when you're there. You'll be surrounded by artists, by volunteers, by audience as well, who really stick around and will go to, once they might be going to a show for the first time at the festival at, say, 6 o'clock on a Friday, and then they say, oh, there's another show at 7:30, and oh, there's another show at 9, and there's another show at 10:30, and there's another show at midnight, and might stay for a whole evening. It's very much something that I think once you put your first foot in the door and experience, then you really get to understand what it's about, and then that's what drags people in. But when people step in and then they experience the kind of the community side of it, the strong social side of it, and the brilliant, diverse art that they don't expect to see like at such close quarters, I think that's the thing that really captures people. So you can expect to see at 10 different venues between Jarntorget, basically from Folketeatern up to Chapmanstorg, so 2 or 3 tram stops. There's 10 different venues, lots of different shows to see. Some you'll really like, some you'll hate, but you won't forget. That's for sure. Yeah, so people there to take a risk on what they see, and also the people they meet. So I think that's what people can expect to experience when they come. For people moving to Gothenburg, most of the shows are either in English or non-verbal. And I think that's a really important part of it as well, because Swedish culture scene, when it comes to the institutions, are very Swedish focused. You go to a lot of venues and it's, if you don't have a perfect command of the language, then you might struggle with some of the things. Whereas with the Fringe Festival, we've become very popular with the international community. And so, yeah, we really try to push that for the international community. And so much so that we have in the festival, and among the 150 shows, we have 40% of the shows are from Swedish artists, but most of them decide to develop their work and perform in English so that they know they have a larger audience, which I think is really, really strong. And also when it comes to the incoming Erasmus students, for example, at the beginning of the school year, we're right at the end of August and the beginning of September with the festival, which is when all these students arrive. And we're there at the student fair and already have something for them to engage in comfortably, knowing that, okay, this is something they'll understand and they will meet like-minded people. So in that sense, I think we're in quite a unique position in Gothenburg with the Fringe Festival. Working in sport and in culture is quite a privilege. That does really inform my social and free life as well, because you end up meeting people who share those passions, and they're 2 very different worlds as well in terms of the people that generally are involved in them. So it can also be nice to introduce those people to the other side of my life in terms of enjoying it rather than just in a working context. Just trying to feel like my time is held up quite well with the balance of work and play. Nothing's going to come for free, like anything in life. So yeah, a willingness to just get a little bit outside of your comfort zone. I think that is the best mindset to have here, and not to compare everything to back home, for better or for worse. Nothing is ever going to be the same. And I think for those of us who lived abroad, or lived in a different country for a number of years, also when you go back to visit your home country, you realise that things, of course, keep changing. As an Irish person, I love going back to Ireland for a couple of weeks every time, but then at the end of that time, I realise why I'm happy to visit. Yeah, so I think having an open mind in that regard, and not being too judgmental of what is happening, and being willing to put in the effort before complaining. Which I feel is a key thing about the Swedish experience here. But yeah, people who do love it, I think all have their own reasons for it, and it's the same for any country, really. I think it's or any place that's different to your own. I think the same attributes are important to have.
In the next episode, you will hear the story of Sarah Harper, who moved to Borås from the United States and is a senior lecturer at the University of Borås.
This understanding that work is not everything and trying to seek a balance in all things it's really special. One of my favorite things about Sweden is the concept of lagom, the idea of things not being too much or too little. I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind in all things. There's always activities available. So whatever you could be interested in, there's going to be something to get involved with. And I think that's probably the best way to meet new people